So everyone has at least two valleys, vitality and then the problem, whatever it might be. The more you practice vitality, putting love into present challenges, the more deep it gets, the wider it gets. You could build a city there, you can live there. But then you'll every once in a while find yourself in the kind of ridge between the two. And it'll feel like you can tip one way or the other. And a very small action can have a huge consequence. You can spiral into the bad behavior. The kind of the negative attractor can pull you in, or you can get into vitality.
Before we get started, if you enjoy these episodes, you might want to check out more at optimwork.com. Our website offers unique content, tools, and exercises to help you thrive at work and beyond. We have an in-depth masterclass covering our entire theory of growth, daily recommendations for personalized advice, and a platform to help groups and organizations learn and practice optimal work together. You can get a free trial at optimwork.com. Now let's start the episode. Hey, this is Sharif, here with another episode of the Optimal Work podcast, joined by Dr. Kevin Majeres. Kevin, good to be back here with you again.
Hey, Sharif, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, Kevin, of course, you're always welcome back, especially when we have big new ideas like I know you want to present today. In this 10th episode of our series on depression, energy, and tiredness, we've been through a lot. It's been through a lot of topics here: good tired, bad tired, vitality, meaning, effort, attention. And so here we want to present kind of a synthesis of all this stuff, right?
That's right. Yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, and in the past 3 episodes, we called it the engines of enthusiasm. We treated all of these 3 engines, meaning, effort, and attention, separately. And now we have some new ideas of how they tie together. I want to present those, right?
That's right, because we were looking at how do you optimize each of the engines, which is a helpful, more mechanistic way of looking at it. I think what people will actually relate more to is what we're about to talk about, which is the experience we have of the different possible ways these engines work together. And so enthusiasm, vitality, that sense when everything is going well, and you can go for long periods of time in life. You can go for, a whole hour, a whole day, a whole year, a whole life, where you feel like these things are all just like humming along and they're working well together. But at the same time, we've all experienced times when there's a bit of a funk. Maybe something annoyed us, that maybe there's some conflict, set us off. We find that somehow we're more entranced by certain thoughts, and we keep getting pulled back into certain ways of thinking and acting. And it can be really hard to feel, how do you shift out of that? And that's what I want to talk about now, is that kind of landscape of what do we do when these engines are all working together, but maybe not in the right way?
And yeah, I guess this came about because you were thinking a little bit about what's the difference between virtuous cycles and vicious cycles. What do they have in common? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that fundamentally, there is a similarity in terms of virtuous cycles make things easier, but they make good ways of acting easier. And when they make things easier, it's more free and it's more meaningful. And it's easier to attend to the present moment and to real life. So the virtuous cycles all have this property that they involve meaning and effort and attention working so well together. But the vicious cycles have their own kind of momentum. And so there's different types, and that's what we'll get into, where they have a momentum of their own. And most important, in people, it's not like we just have this one quality of like, oh, I am in the virtuous cycle territory. Oh, and then it kind of gradually goes down. And then now I'm gradually getting into the vicious cycle territory. No, there can be these abrupt transitions in life. And this is something that clinically I face all the time. People come to me and generally speaking, life is good and they have a lot of vitality. But then there's this one issue. It could be an addiction. It could be something that they thought they were done with and then suddenly rears up in a surprising way. So how do we understand these quick transitions? So that's what I'm wanting to get into. And one of the fascinating ways of getting at it is it seems a little bit like it's a chaotic system, right? I'm not sure if you ever read The Three Body Problem.
I
So,
didn't.
so yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
Kirschner.
the truth comes out.
It's a great science fiction story,
Mhm.
and it became a TV show. Uh, the three body problem basically is what happens when you have three gravitational poles, that once they're interacting with each other, it can become extremely hard to predict. It becomes truly chaotic, the motion. So it's like it's infinite. Um, Inside that kind of seeming chaos, patterns can emerge. And these patterns are what we're going to be focusing on. Because the pattern is a pattern of behavior, a pattern of acting, a pattern of how meaning, effort, and attention line up. Those patterns are what generate their own kind of momentum, right? And so in chaos theory, they're called strange attractors, which can sound a little bit foreboding. But a strange attractor is this kind of pattern that has three properties. One is that it is in its own way stable. Conditions, moment to moment, life happens, all these things change, but this pattern can be seen again and again and again. And it kind of shows up at any scale. Also take, for instance, vitality. The signature move, the core pattern of vitality is bringing love into a challenge with present willingness. So you greet each moment as an opportunity to put in love willingly, attending fully to the present moment. That move is that's the pattern. That operates as a kind of attractor. And then it gets not just seen at the level of the moment, but it can then extend the level of the whole hour can be marked by that. A whole day can be marked by that. A week, a year, a whole life. That's the power of this attractor, is it scales it ceaselessly. So any scale you look at, you can see fundamentally that pattern at work. But there are also negative strange attractors, and primarily, and we'll get into why, there's three of them. And that's what we see in psychiatry: addiction, anxiety, depression. Each of these has their own unique kind of signature move, their own pattern. In depression is that when things get difficult, effort appears futile and then they withdraw to conserve energy. But that happens not just every moment, but that just defines the hour, the day, the week. With anxiety, it's this continual scanning or checking for threats, preparing oneself always for these threats, living in a state of fear and avoidance. The urge there is to be avoiding the threat always, particularly through preparation. But that move, again, is multiplied at every scale. And addiction is even more fundamental in a way. When there's discomfort, I seek relief. When dynorphins are high, I seek cheap dopamine to try to counterbalance them. And that's escape. So whether it's withdraw or avoidance or escape, these are these powerful patterns that then they have a kind of magnetic pull to them. And you can get drawn into acting that way. And as you do that, then the other two features emerge. One is that the more you act according to one of these patterns, the deeper a basin or valley is created. And you can dwell in that valley. When you're in the valley, you cannot really see out of it. It seems permanent. Uh, and then the other move is that the other effect is that you actually have ridges between valleys. So everyone has at least two valleys: vitality and then the problem, whatever it might be. And I say that there's these three, they can blend in infinite ways. And so it's just that these are kind of the typical, most major patterns. And so you have like the problem valley and you have the vital valley. The more you practice vitality, putting love into present challenges, the more deep it gets. the wider it gets. You could build a city there. You can live there. You could live your whole life there. But then you'll every once in a while find yourself in the kind of ridge between the two. And it'll feel like you can tip one way or the other. And a very small action can have a huge consequence. You can spiral out of into the bad behavior. The kind of the negative attractor can pull you in, or you can get into vitality. So that's the whole landscape of it. And in my experience working with patients, it describes very well. Sometimes they're totally in the vital valley. Things feel stable. They can kind of remember what it was like when they're in the grips of the anxiety, but they're not there right now. Other times they're at the saddle point, in between the two, straddling it, and they can tip either way. And then sometimes they come and they're in distress, and you can tell they're actually in the anxious valley or whichever one.
So, Kevin, just to be clear, I guess the way I'm imagining this is you have some kind of landscape, and then this is describing like your current habits or your way of being right now. Is in the landscape, you have these valleys that represent addiction, depression, anxiety, and also a valley that represents vitality. And I picture like I'm like a little marble here, and I can be, rolling around in one of the valleys, but also sometimes I can, you can get some force can blow you up onto one of the ridges, and then you're in this unstable area where you could go either way. Is that how you're visualizing it?
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. You could think of that it could roll either direction when it's at the saddle point. Uh, and so what this explains then is take the signature move of vitality, the ability to really put love into some little action, right? That is the signature move, putting love into little acts of attending to people you're with, little acts of the work that you're doing. So even the little acts, that can go into meditation and prayer. So you put love into these little acts with full willingness, being in the present moment, so that your meaning is high and positive, the effort is channeled. Difficulties are just welcomed as opportunities to grow and to exercise love even more. And that allows you to be fully present to the task or person. Every time you are practicing that, you are perhaps deepening the vitality valley and then making it more your normal place of abode. But it has even more noticeable power if you're at a saddle point. When you're at the saddle, you could go either way. The deliberate practice of that signature move of vitality is essentially what moves you into rolling down into the vital valley. You could have easily, like, these saddle points actually happen all the time. And that's where these small acts have very profound and noticeable effects. Okay, which is really important. We'll have to talk about saddle points and and recognizing them. But it's also really important. And this is, I think, I didn't understand how powerful this was until I was explaining this with patients. That people very commonly have the idea, I'm doing everything right. I'm listening to Optimal Works podcast. I'm practicing these things. I'm doing everything right, but it just doesn't feel like I'm making progress. Now, what I can tell people is if you are practicing the signature move of vitality, you will certainly be getting better. That is the solution. But if you're in a deep valley of anxiety, you're not going to feel it. What's happening is the more you practice vitality in that moment, the stronger those muscles get of vitality because there's such a contrary force. You are gradually shifting the entire landscape of that valley. It is getting less deep. Because what deepens the anxiety valley is the constant scanning, checking, problem solving, preparing, all of the kind of the work that people are doing when they're trying to solve anxiety as a problem. That's like drilling down the valley deeper and deeper and deeper. So if you're practicing vitality, by trying to put love, not fear, into it, trying to be present in the moment, not in the future, willingly embracing whatever's there, not unwillingly fleeing it. You are not going deeper. In fact, you are going to be making that valley more and more shallow progressively. But when you're in the valley, you won't notice the change, right? Fortunately, you will not, no one lives always in a valley. All of us have saddle points. And this is also where freedom then is experienced the most. So saddle points are transitional spaces. And we tend to be in a saddle whenever we're in a transition. And there are some that I found to be really powerful. Uh, One is the very first moment you wake up. Before your thoughts have any particular direction, you are at a saddle point, the prototypical saddle point. If you embrace the day willingly and jump out of bed, so you try to approach it with a positive sense, you try to have a sense of service from the very first second. You can say serviam, I will serve. Like you try to have a sense of making your day about love and service right from the get-go. That is practicing vitality and setting it down in the right path. But if you avoid the day, if you start scanning and checking for all the problems that might come, let that be anxiety, start feeling how effortful everything is going to be, and you feel like withdrawing, that would be depression. You're going to feel then more and more like you get down, you start spiraling. It's not right from the moment you wake up. It's the next moment. And the next after that is even more. The next after that is even more as you gain momentum going down. So that's one really important saddle point.
You mentioned that if you're like one of the original reasons why you were thinking about this was because you saw people transitioning very quickly from one state to a different state. Do you notice any pattern in that? And then we can explore these saddle points a little bit more. But uh, I don't know. It seems like you would see someone in a state of vitality, and then things kind of crumble apart when they encounter some difficult life situation. Do you see the opposite, where someone is in one of these other basins of depression, anxiety, addiction, and then all of a sudden it's just like goes away? Or I'm trying to understand like the dynamics of this whole system.
So it has been a standard move in CBT that you have people rate how they feel, like, randomly through the day. And so we've known for a long time that even people who are very depressed, it's not the entire day. They still have these moments. What I'm saying is that probably in those moments, they don't feel great. They probably feel flat. But that flatness is a sign of being in the saddle. So people can learn to identify where they are. And so, yeah, so I don't know. I don't think people respond. It could be that the, no, this is going to be like, it's not like there's infinite landscape. And if you push one valley really far down, probably all the other valleys get more shallow. Yeah, and so it's there's some kind of conservation of mass going on. Uh, and so that means though the fundamental thing is if you are practicing the signature move of vitality, no matter where you are, you will get better. If you are in a vital valley, it's going to feel easy and second nature, but still it'll feel even more and more meaningful. That's the virtuous cycle. If it's flat, you're actually going to notice its impact even more. Practicing the signature move will feel like you get traction more quickly, and you'll start to see the positive feedback cycle. Like, whoa, I can see how this works. That's why, if you're thinking like, is there one thing that determines when you're in the saddle, whether you're going to roll to vitality or roll to, say, anxiety or depression, that one thing is willingness. Willingness, I think fundamentally, this in the biology sense, willingness to embrace adrenaline and use it, willingness to embrace adenosine, willingness to embrace dynorphin. There is some fundamental willingness. That willingness then is shown by reframing and welcoming it. Say, great, okay, this is exactly the practice I need. Bring it on. Savoring it mindfully. Let yourself embrace the discomfort so you stop fearing it. Explore it. Let yourself feel the sensations of adrenaline or adenosine or dynorphin so that you can see this actually isn't really what I was making it out to be. When I'm fleeing it, it seems bad. And then leaning into it lovingly. So that's the real ultimate part of willingness. So these are all things that get the engines online, bring meaning back, bring effort back, bring attention back to the present. They get us rolling in the right way. Uh, but if you try practicing vitality when you're in a deep trough, in a deep valley, on the bad side, again, it will not feel like it's working, but with persistence, you'll notice you're not getting worse. And if you can practice it, and this is key, if you can practice it when things are so bad, the next time you're at a transition point at a saddle, it'll be so much easier to practice it. Then you can actually roll into vitality. So there's actually two main times for people to practice willingness. One is when things are really bad. That's the hardest practice, but it's you get the greatest payoff. And the other is when it's easier because you're at a saddle point. And then, of course, it's great to keep practicing it when you're doing well. So you should have to encourage people to do that because now they're getting the encouragement from the act itself.
Mhm. So, so you're explaining why, someone who's, yeah, in one of these valleys, they might they change their behavior, but it doesn't change the feelings immediately. So it's only later that affects so the basin or the valley is getting less deep, so it's less kind of trapping them, but they're building the underlying habits without necessarily feeling better immediately.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
And what we do then in therapy is, and this is a much deeper topic, I think, but we actually deliberately put people on the saddle so that we can train them in willingness in that moment. They might be doing well and they feel great and they're in the vital valley, but like in talking to them, you can tell there is still actually a lot of unwillingness to welcome dynorphins or adrenaline or adenosine should it arise. So that means there's work to be done. All right. So then you think about engineering instability. You do that by bringing on the anxiety, bringing on the adrenaline, so that in the midst of the adrenaline coming on, they can learn to welcome it and savor it and embrace it as, as like exactly the growth that they need with as much love as they could. With tiredness, it's harder to do that in the session, but just helping them to be thinking about what they will feel when they start thinking about the next meaningful win they can aim for. I think, I think we can go through each of these and say, how do you really help people to practice these moves, the signature move of vitality in the different situation? It's always doable. With addiction, one of the things this shows us is actually the attractor in addiction is not the substance or behavior. The attractor is the pattern of escaping dynorphins with cheap dopamine. That is the thing, and that can extend to many different kinds of things. So I think this is actually really clarifying for even then, how do we think about doing exposures? That it's identifying what's the real unwillingness. Can we bring it on and then train people in session in how to be willing? But of course, in real life, you're going to have these moments coming throughout the day. Oh, one thing I want to mention, because it relates so much to optimal work. The other biggest saddle point in the day is when you first sit down to work. At the beginning of the workday, actually the beginning of any period of work, but especially the first period of work. That is a recognized point where people can either start spiraling down or they can get into a nice vital groove and get momentum. So in optimal work, when we first started coaching people, the twin focus of the first session was help people to do a golden hour, the first hour of work of the day, and and to bring really meaning and effort and tension all in line together. And the other, help people jump out of bed the moment their alarm first sounds. And we would see the fastest change of pattern of life. That no matter what the valley was that people seemed to be dwelling in, the vitality valley deepened very fast. And people got really good then at extending that kind of thinking to whenever something came up. You will have a saddle anytime there's a surprise in your life or conflict in your life or any real, in fact, intense stressor. And then for some people, if your valley is anxiety, then things that provoke uncertainty and give you adrenaline, that's going to be the unique thing that will cause one of these saddle moments, even if you had been doing great. You'll have to keep practicing vitality in those moments. So that whether it's like emotional transitions in tasks and what you're doing, even getting home and going to bed at night are these saddle points. So this is where typically people who struggle with things, there are these particular moments where they tend to struggle, and there are always these transitions. So I think this idea, borrowed from chaos theory and strange attractors, actually helps us to make sense of it in a new way.
So, Kevin, so you wanted to now talk about next about these three valleys and the three signature moves associated with each of them, and then how to flip each one into the signature move of vitality, of willingly embracing suffering, right? Embracing this discomfort. So it's you're saying it's different in each case, and so you need to be aware of like what valley am I most likely in, and how do I see that signature move come up, and then now what am I going to do to flip it?
Yeah, and we'll have to explore more what makes these three, vicious valleys, what makes them unique. There's some particular there are differences among them and how they feel and how people experience them. And that actually has a lot to do then with how we try to engineer the embracing of vitality, even in the depths of it. So I think that's completely doable. The yeah, it's actually one other thing that is really kind of tickles my mind here. This idea of vitality as being a signature move of putting love into each task or challenge with present willingness. That idea, in my mind, actually enlightens what Aristotle was talking about when he's talking about eudaimonia, that happiness, as we would traditionally call it, is not an emotion and it's not a state, it's an activity. So here we could say that is actually the activity is energeia. It is actually a vital pattern. It's a pattern of acting. So happiness is a pattern of acting according to virtue. So he's saying that vitality is when you're actually living virtuous cycles in this way. So I think you actually completely agree with this idea because the virtues, these stable habits, those are all features of that valley that make it go deeper and deeper and deeper within us. So I think it's also we'll have to talk about in more what makes vitality so unique as his own kind of valley compared to the other three.
Hmm. And then what also the characteristics of the other three and
Yes,
what their signature is. So we'll get into that next week.
sounds great.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Kevin. This gives such a good framework for understanding all these things. So excited to explore more with you.
Great, Sharif. Thank you.
All right. We'll be back. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and you're looking for more in-depth guidance, check out optimwork.com, our unique platform that delivers content, tools, and exercises to help you thrive at work and beyond.